Hello everyone, I'm Anirban Bhattacharya and I welcome you to my YouTube channel, Professor Wanderlust. Today we are going to resume our discussion on William Blake. In the previous videos, we did talk about William Blake's famous lyrics, The Lamb and the Chimney Sweeper, from the Songs of Innocence volume. I have already mentioned earlier that the Songs of Innocence was individually published in 1789, coinciding the year of the French Revolution. 5 years later, Blake published a combined volume, and he named it The Songs of Innocence and Experience, showing the contrary states of the human soul. Likewise, in total contrast to the poems in the Songs of Innocence, the poems in the Songs of Experience depicted sceneries of despair and misery, deprivation of hope, exploitation, and all the stark realities of human existence during that time. However, some critics are of the opinion that the darkness projected and portrayed in the Songs of Experience is not wholly negative. Critics who actually subscribe to this idea, they are of the opinion that innocence is an imperfect and fragile state, and it needs to be charged and enlarged with experience. Simultaneously, critics who subscribe to this view are of the opinion that innocence and experience are contrary states. They are in a relationship of dialectic interplay or contrariety of theses and antitheses and aim towards a synthesis of higher visionary awareness. Such arguments are directly related to Blake's own dictum that he portrayed in his famous poem, The Marriage of Heaven and Hell. The Marriage of Heaven and Hell came out in 1792. Now, this came out after the publication of the individual Songs of Innocence volume in 1789, but before the combined volume came out in 1794. Perhaps Blake was trying to educate his audience about this very concept of contrary states. In The Marriage of Heaven and Hell, Blake writes, "Without contraries is no procreation. Attraction and repulsion, reason and energy, love and hate are all necessary to human existence. Thus, if the lamp is about the meekness and mildness of Jesus Christ and about his shared divinity with animals, human beings and nature, in the contrary poem, The Tiger, in the Songs of Experience, we not only come across a very strong and powerful creator, but also a very revengeful and a very wrathful one. Likewise, if in the Bible we come across the association of Christ with that of a lamb, then also we come across the depiction of a God in the form of a very furious deity who is directly associated with fire. Likewise, in the Old Testament of the Bible, in the book of Ezekiel, chapter 30, verse 8, we find, "Then they will know that I am Lord when I set fire in Egypt and all our helpers are destroyed." Here we find a narration coming from the point of view of a very furious and a very wrathful God who is willing to kind of destroy the non-believers. The poem is full of references to rebellion. Number 1, to Satan's revolt in Paradise Lost. The stars threw down their spears. Number 2, to Prometheus, a favorite rebel of the Romantics. What the hand dare seize the fire? And perhaps to Icarus, on what wings dare he aspire? Such images have led some critics to see the tiger as a metaphor for revolution. As Peter Ackroyd suggests, even as Blake worked upon the poem, the revolutionaries in France were being branded in the image of a ravening beast. After the Paris massacre of September 1792, an English statesman declared, "One might as well think of establishing a republican of tigers in some forest in Africa." And there were newspaper references to the Tribunal of Tigers. At a later date, Jean-Paul Marat's eyes were said to resemble those of the tiger cat. In the prelude, Wordsworth describes post-revolutionary Paris as a place of fear, defenseless as a wood where tiger roam. The tiger, powerful, unpredictable, gorgeous, but deadly, seems a potent image for what Yeats would later call the terrible beauty of revolution. The first two lines in the first stanza, "Tiger, tiger, burning bright in the forest of the night." The implicit contrast between the luminosity of the tiger, burning bright, and the darkness of the forest around it clearly shows the animal in a positive light, since the forest in Blake are signifiers of repression and terror. In Blake's famous poem, The French Revolution, which was written 2 years before The Tiger, the Duke of Burgundy, who represents the oppressive French nobility, describes the Ancien regime as the ancient forest of chivalry. In another very famous work of William Blake, Europe, A Prophecy, which Blake engraved in the same year as the Songs of Innocence and Experience, the phrase "night of nature" refers to the 1800 years old history of man's suffering under oppression. In the last plate of the same poem, tigers are said to couch upon their prey and suck the ruddy tide when the revolution commences in France. The imagery of the tiger thus relates the poem to a social and political context. The first clue as to the identity of the creator of the tiger is provided in the third and fourth lines of the poem. "What immortal hand or eye could frame thy fearful symmetry?" If we do not allow ourselves to be distracted by the ostensible meaning of the word immortal, it is easy to recognize that both hand and eye refer to the essential physical attributes of the artist, poet, or engraver as the imaginative realizers of all the divine vision. The word symmetry reinforces this interpretation, for Blake was to use the word again in the context of artistic achievement and realization. Also, that the immortality of the creator of the tiger does not refer so much to his supernatural status as to his possession of a developed imaginative faculty is proved by many of Blake's observations. To Johann Caspar Lavater's aphorism, "He only who has enjoyed immortal moments can reproduce them," William Blake added, "Oh, that men would seek immortal moments! Oh, that men would converse with God." In the second stanza of the poem, Blake's vision intuits the sources of the fire that blazes in the eyes of the tiger. "In what distant deeps or skies burned the fire of thine eyes?" Both deeps and skies are images that ground the context to an earthly dimension of reality. It metaphorically represents the vision of the revolutionaries to secure an operation-free world between the two sources of fire, the sun and the earth. In the line that follows, "On what wings dare he aspire?" introduces a further image, that of wings, which reminds one of the flying birds, iconic representation of creative energy and imagination that decorate the pages of Blake's illuminated text. On the plate of the tiger, one such bird significantly shown as flying upwards and aspiring is positioned over the first two words of the text. The secondary allusion is Blake's line to Daedalus and Icarus, reinforce the implication of the human dimension of both the creator and his creative effort. The third stanza of the poem syntactically merges the tiger and its creator. For just as a work of art is its creator's artifact, so too can the artist be known as his creation. The conflation of the creator and his created object, the tiger, is most effectively accomplished in the line, "What dread hand and what dread feet, that the limbs are simultaneously those of the creator and the created. In alluding to the Creator's instruments of iron working in the 4th stanza, what the hammer, what the chain, in what furnace was thy brain? What the anvil, what dread grabs, there is deadly terror claps. Wallace Stevenson mentions the gods Thor and Jove, as well as the smith gods Hephaestus and Wieland, in classical and Germanic pantheons. However, Morton de Palais seems to be more correct in noting that in Jerusalem, it is Los, Blake's eternal man of imagination, who is pictured with all 4 instruments, hammer, chain, furnace and anvil, mentioned in the tiger, and that in a later poem in the epic, both the tiger and the woolly lamb are said to have been formed by Los. The lines in question are those later forming the 5th stanza, when the stars threw down their spears and watered heaven with their tears. Did he smile his work to see? Did he who made the lamb make thee? We can approach these symbols most clearly and concretely through Blake's use of them in his contemporary historical prophecies. In his work in general, stars and heavens symbolize the rigidly categorical restrictions imposed upon man by laws deprived from abstract reason, and the whipping of stars symbolizes, at the cosmic level, an apocalyptic melting or breaking down of these barriers, separating man from his own humanity, a return of man from the forest of night. When Blake describes the repentance or defeat of tyrants, consistently shows the starry forces throwing down their spears and weeping. In the French Revolution, the French writer Emmanuel Sieyès, also known as the Abbé de Sieyès, the voice of the people, hopes that the king's soldier will throw down his sword and musket and run and embrace the meek peasant, and predicts that when this happens, the noble shall hear and shall weep and put off the crown of oppression. A similar throwing down of weapons and weeping occurs twice in America, not as a hope, but as an accomplished fact, and it is furthermore produced by the appearance of the fiery orc, just as the action in our poem is brought about through the creation of the burning tiger. When the spirit of orc inspires the Americans, the British soldiers through the 13 states sent up a howl of anguish, threw down their swords and musket to the earth and ran. And a little later, when the red fires of orc have driven the plagues sent upon the American banks upon George III himself, the royal forces sent up a howl of anguish and threw off their hammered mane and cast their swords and spears to earth. When this happens, Urizen adds to their fears of anguish by whipping himself. Indeed, he literally waters the heavens above, which he sits, shedding tears in Grotesque's deluge piteous. No one would argue that the symbolic action in the historical prophecies is exactly equivalent in meaning or effect to the action in the 5th stanza of the tiger, but the pattern of the king's armies throwing down their weapons and weeping, whether in repentance or in the unrepented anguish of defeat, is similar enough to the action in the first 2 lines of the stanza to indicate that these lines do not at one level describe a victory for political liberty, it only as a symptom or a result of the apocalypse. And the context of the rest of the poem shows that this victory is a result of the creation of the dreaded tiger. Knowing Blake's Republican sympathy and the transcendent values he attached to political liberty, we can be certain at this level that the creator of the tiger, which could thus advance the cause of freedom, was none other than he who made the lamb. And we can just be as certain that this creator smiled his work to see. Moreover, because of the unity of Blake's cosmos, assures us of consistency in the general import of his symbolism through all its levels of meaning. We can be confident that the fifth stanza shows the dread tiger to be not only a divine creation but also, despite its dreadfulness, an aspect of the divine will. Appearing in songs of experience, the tiger is usually understood as the companion piece of the lamb in songs of innocence. Both poems ask the same question: where do we come from? In the lamb, an answer is given: God made us. Simple affirmation of faith. The tiger only implies the answer by posing the rhetorical question: did he who made the lamb make thee? Indeed, one of the most noticeable features of the tiger is that it takes the form of a series of questions, none of which are answered, whereas the lamb posits the process of creation as natural and harmonious. The tiger shows us something much more violent and mysterious. The tiger comes from the forest of the night and his eyes burn in distant deeps and skies. His creation is an act of confrontation and audacity. The poem shifts between could and dare, which implies transgression and disobedience. Ending in dare in the final stanza, a direct repeat of the first, except for the change of a verb at the start of the final line, which is marked with a spondee, dare friend, rather than the iambic of the first stanza, good friend, emphasizing its significance. The tiger represents the energy that Blake felt could burst the prison of starry jealousy in which Earth had lamented when she was incarcerated. This lyric is thus an embodiment and a celebration of the principles of imaginative realization. Oh, we are back. Hello everyone. I hope you have liked the lecture and found the whole series on William Blake very useful. However, please feel free to ask any question if you have any query regarding William Blake in the comment section. I'll try to reply as soon as possible. For your ready reference, I have attached a copy of the transcript of this lecture in the description box. Now this will help you prepare your notes on William Blake and specifically on the tiger. Please do like, share, subscribe, and don't forget to click the bell icon for more updates on videos like this. Thank you and goodbye till we meet again.